Hello, everybody. I hope that you all had a great lunch break and that you're back for one last session for the day, feeling refreshed and full. I am Katie Biggs. I am the Director of Operations at NavalWorks Montana and one of the conference planners. I'm also your room host for this breakout session. We're so excited that you guys have joined us. I ask that you please mute your lines and use the chat function for questions right now. We will try to address all questions before the end of the session. Just a few quick housekeeping items. I'm going to continue to admit people into this room. All sessions are being recorded and all session recordings will be available after the conference. Like I said, please mute your lines and turn off your video while the presenters are presenting. Please click the chat icon, select all panelists and attendees, and enter your name, organization, and location. We would love to know where you're coming to us from. Each of you should have received a little whiteboard paddle in the mail. I hope you got that. If you find something inspiring, exciting, or new, write a quick adjective on that whiteboard, hold it up during the Q&A section, and let us know what you learned. If you don't feel comfortable coming off video, please also just drop that in the chat. We'd love to engage with you. I have the honor and the privilege of introducing you to our friend Ian Ullman. Ian is the VP of Mortgage Lending at Guaranteed Rate. He is also a NavalWorks Montana board member and great advocate for the work of affordable housing and seeing homeowners, specifically those at low and moderate incomes, achieve the dream of homeownership. He also is sage and wise and has great information for each of you today around goal setting. So Ian, I will turn the floor to you today.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. So yeah, howdy everybody. Hopefully you're mostly awake after lunch. I'm struggling because my wife made me an amazing sandwich, hence the coffee. So just a couple, I guess, housekeeping items on my end. There's a bug in my office. That's not a good start. That's ironic. So I'm going to make a bold request, which is, if at all possible, all in, focus. And what I mean by that is, if at all possible, literally close emails, put your phone on do not disturb. A great mortgage coach friend of mine says there's no such thing as multitasking. It's just doing two things crappy. So let's not do that. Let's, if we're going to commit the time, let's commit the time. Okay. My cell phone is off and I'm a mortgage lender. That could cost me money. That's just the reality of our business. My 4 kids are handcuffed to the back porch, so there won't be any distractions. Actually, my wife has them running a couple errands today. I'm working from home, hence the Top Gun sign. If at all possible, actually, at various moments, cameras on. I love faces. I love people. I don't necessarily love reading names. So if you're comfortable being on camera, I think we're okay bandwidth wise for the smaller breakouts. Katie's told me that anyway. I'm going to need Katie to be a bit of my eyes. Oh, there's the chat. I did get the chat up. Cool. And then a couple of disclaimers. The opinions here are mine and not that of Guaranteed Rate. I have no filter, so I will try really hard not to swear. We've got a lot of ground to cover and I talk fast. So I'm going to apologize in advance to our note takers. And like Katie said, throw any questions in the chat. I should be able to grab them when I come up for air, or feel free to throw a hand raise on. I don't quite have all of you on one screen on here, but if you throw a hand raise in, I should be able to get you. So a little bit of my background. That's all right, Sam, I'll allow it. I have special love for Habitat. I originated all of our Habitat for Humanity Yellowstone County loans for about 4 years, my former employer. So a little bit of my background, I've been in mortgage lending for just over 6 years. I've been in the banking industry about 16. My first 10 were in banker support call center for Wells Fargo, more or less. So I've done the Cubicleville and then I've done out here with the humans. And a couple things, and just so you all are aware, along with my no filter, I can't teach this without being personal with my experiences. So if me tearing up on certain situations is uncomfortable for you, imagine how uncomfortable it is for me. But that's just the reality of who I am and how I teach. So in March of 2003, I met a gentleman named David Robinson who absolutely changed my life. I was waiting tables on him. And he, for whatever reason, saw a spark and took an interest in and was willing to mentor me. And so he introduced me to a lot of the concepts, a lot of the authors and trainers and things that we're going to kind of talk about today. So that's a little bit of my background. So first things first, we're going to talk about what today is not. It's not the smarter goals talk. If you're all familiar with that, you know, the specific, measurable, A, R, time-based, all those things. There's a ton of great teaching on all those things, so that's not what we're here about. It's not a concrete, strict daily plan. One of the biggest things I think that people get caught up in is we hear about a program, we see, you know, some guru says something, we feel obligated to 100%. This is the thing we got to do. I don't agree with that personally. I think it's much more like a gym membership or like a budget, which we'll talk about some of those things down the road here, which is you need to find what fits you. And so part of what today is about is I'm fishing. I'm throwing out things that have worked for me. I'm throwing out things that have worked for other people to try to catch something that will work for you. So don't feel like you have to take every single thing and run with it today. I say treat this whole time we spend together this hour like a grocery store. If you've tried to buy salsa recently, you know there's 78 different flavors of salsa at Walmart. You don't have to buy all 78. You get the one you need, you leave the rest for later in case you want to try them. Treat all this information the same way. This is also not the only method for successful goal setting. This is just an angle of attack that has worked for my brain, which, as I was joking with Katie, is somewhat freewheeling and somewhat neurotic. I'm a weird beast in that regard. So the other reason I like seeing some faces, if I'm saying things that are enraging you, and I can't tell from your face, then I'm going to keep doing the same things I'm saying. I hope that's not the case, but I just want to throw that out there. So what this is today, Jessica, you are winning the hair game today, girl. I tell you what, I'm a fan. What today is a framework to facilitate effective goal setting. We always hear set a goal. It's a big thing. What do we do with it? Interwoven in all of this, I'm going to talk a lot about mindset, which a lot of that feeds and funnels through to then what are your actually goals and how you pursue those. Today is definitely about reassurance that you, yes, even you, can set and pursue goals. It's reassurance that you, yeah, especially you, will fail, so you might as well fail forward with a plan. Mike Tyson has one of my favorite quotes of all time. Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the mouth. So the 5 areas that I've broken out, this is for the note takers. I'm not going to give you much meat today that is going to be on screen because you don't need me reading to you. If you did, I would just send you the slide deck. But this one's for the note takers. The 5 areas, everything that I've kind of studied and learned and leaned into with goal setting, everything kind of funnels to these 5 areas. In my mind, like in my mind's picture, it's almost like it's like 5 points on like a star, but then the external ones are connected. So like each one's connected to the others in certain ways in certain situations, but there's these kind of 5 major points. The problem is I can't visually, I don't want to put that up because it's a pentagram, which is not what we're talking about today. That's that no filter thing. You're welcome. So anyway, spiritual, social, emotional, physical, and financial. 2 and 3, to me, kind of, they go together a lot, but there's nuances that make them separate between social and emotional. And we'll talk about my perspectives on those. Personally, for me, these are in order of importance, top to bottom. That being said, I've been broke before. And when you're broke, it's like when somebody's holding your head underwater. Money is the only thing you think about if you don't have any money. So I completely acknowledge that this is a fluidity thing that at certain times and phases in life, these things are going to move around a little bit. Lori Yurko is here. I'm happy. Sorry, I just saw in the chat. Hi, Lori. I hope you are doing wonderfully. Lori's one of my favorite humans. Okay, so spiritual. This is, generically speaking, this is the best way I could bucket it while being inclusive of all of the worldviews, and there are in abundance. Your relationship with the universe. Why do I think that matters? And how does that fit in the land of goal setting? Okay. For the vast majority of people that I know, whether they're spiritual in the traditional sense or not, whether it's energies or God or, you know, Eastern religions or whatever those things are, a lot of that dictates how we view ourselves and how we view our place within the world. And I think that very, very much matters when we look at goal setting for our own lives and for the impacts of, so today's heavily goal setting in your personal life, I think, or professional life as an individual, but a lot of it I think can translate organizationally as well. And it'll help you maybe get some tools and some phraseology to connect with your teams in effective ways, so that we're actually, like Simon Sinek says, our goal is to do business with people who believe what we believe. So we can find those common grounds and move forward within that, and actually exemplify and promote and kind of shine a light on those unique characteristics amongst our teams, and like letting everybody be their best selves. Like Mike Robbins, the author, his book, Bring Your Whole Self to Work. What a concept. Don't leave part of you at the door, bring your whole self. And so I think the spirituality piece is a big, big piece of that. So, goal setting wise, that gets very, a lot of that flexes on what avenue of spirituality you personally believe or pursue. For me, I'm Team Jesus. My request is, don't judge me if you're not. I don't judge you if you're not. Cool. So it's spiritual disciplines in the case of biblical Christianity, but really any, spiritual disciplines across the spectrum are fitting. I think even as a Christian dude, there's huge value in not just prayer, but also actual meditation, in journaling, some of those more, non-traditional, if you're looking at a more traditional church setting, for example. So it's taking the time, it's carving out intentional time to get perspective with ourselves and the world around us. And so I think that's a big, it's a big piece for me. I actually lead a men's Bible study group. When I get to social, I'll talk about my guys a lot, because I think people are meant to do life together, which is why I think it's so important. I actually put it above emotional, which I'll tag on here in a minute. So social, your relationship with those around you. This is tough. This is where I cry, just being honest. So your relationship with those around you. Most of us grew up with some form of a household, and that household impacted how we view the world, how we view other people, how we treat other people, how we view ourselves. Anybody have tapes that replay in their minds, things their parents said or did, right? And so even as adults, those things impact us and how we treat the world. And so I think a lot of the social, and this ties into the emotional, is we need to be willing to lean into that crap, for lack of a better term. Some of it's great. Some of you are two-parent household, upper middle income, baseball cleats were never a problem. That's great. But we also need to be willing to lean into that. And I think this is a good room for that because of the nature of the conference. We're all aware, I think we're all very acutely aware, more than most of the society, about what's going on around us in the world. I mean, let's just be frank. There are some hard stuff. Socially, if COVID taught us anything, it's that people need people. If you look at the oncoming, what we're starting to see rolling out and have been for months now, with the statistics around mental health, around suicide rates, Montana is double the national average anyway. People need people. And because of our pioneering spirit, we suck at it. We're just not good at it. So mental health, all of those things, I think people should have goals in that regard. I have a great friend who's the best marriage and family counselor and pastor I've ever met. And the way he puts it is, if your counselor doesn't have a counselor, you should fire them. So, I mean, we carry heavy stuff in this life. And if you're not intentionally goal setting, if you're not intentionally processing those things on an ongoing basis, they don't go away. And here's why that matters. If we're not leaning into those things, they're still there. The one sentence my dad said to me at 15 that was the reason I quit baseball was there for over 20 years before I dealt with it. So yeah, I talked to my dad, but I didn't have a relationship with my dad. Every one of us has one of those things. What could have been a friend, family member, coworker, boss. You're the sharpest gal on our team and you suck. Things like that. And as much as we try to brush them off, they stick because our brains are computers and they use whatever goes into them. And so we need to lean in. We need to set goals, I think, to process through those things, whether that's a safe core group. For me, it's my men's group. and a counselor as well, because there's some things that are professional capacity, but that's literally a goal setting thing. Like, I'm going to finally reconcile my relationship with my sibling this year. And how do I build steps to be able to do that? What kind of support structure do I need around me to do that? That all matters. My men's group and I, like right now, one of my guys is going through a divorce, and we're all carrying that with him. And he flat out told us, he goes, "This is the worst pain I've ever felt in my life, and I have no clue what I'd be doing without you guys." So the reason social matters and the reason we need to be intentional around it is we need to have those 411 calls. I'm aging myself here, but we need to have those 411 calls and those connections built up already, so that when the 911 call happens, and it's not if, it's when life happens, we already have the relational equity in place to be able to navigate that with others. Because if you're alone now and doing awesome, great, except everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And when you get punched in the face, who around you is going to help you carry that? Okay, so social to me for that reason is gargantuan. And for me, just this is a funny one. Everyone says, I like Montanans especially. Oh, I'm closer to God in the mountains. I go up and hike. Cool. Except when it was just God and one guy, what did God say? It's not good for man to be alone. So it has its place, but it should not be our main mode of operating. We all need our peace time, some more than others. I'm an extrovert, so you people actually feed me. I love this part because I love people to a fault sometimes, which is okay. So emotional. Emotional is heavy. It's your relationship with yourself. I don't know about you, but I don't like a lot of me, or I didn't. I'm still working on it. And the reason that social and emotional are so tight is the vast majority of our social interactions are actually predicated upon our insecurities in ourselves. This is just me being transparent. This is going to seem really, really silly to a lot of you probably, but until I was probably 30, 35 years old, I'm 40 now, I was not comfortable at all dealing with, in a business setting, with males who were taller or older than me. Well, I'm 5'9", so that's like everybody. And I always put myself in a one down position. They never did it. I did it to myself. And I didn't know what the heck that was until I looked back at my family of origin and looked at the power struggles that happened in our home and the actual physical presence. So my older brother played offensive line in college football. We're not built the same. He was 6'1", probably 275 pounds at the time. And so there was always this like intimidation factor where I was like, I can't physically step into the room without knowing I'm less than. And that carried with me through to adulthood. So that was kind of a social plus emotional thing that I had to spend some time digging into and dealing with. And in really a lot of the social emotional pieces for me personally, in 2008, Dave Robinson recommended a couple books to me and I read them, and it started a trend where I set a goal. It's like, I don't understand goal setting at all, but I have a goal. I'm going to read 15 minutes every single day in a personal development book. I'll pick a book, I'll get a recommendation of a book, but 15 minutes every day, period, end of story. I was working 2 jobs at the time, and there were days that I would literally have to read standing up so I wouldn't fall asleep. I fell asleep in my shower one time, but I wasn't reading in the shower. I just fell asleep in there because I was working 85-hour weeks, split shifting. So, and in that 1 year, I read 34 books, and it absolutely changed the trajectory of my life. And in all of that, I learned more frameworks around goal setting, around relationship safety, around personal processing through emotional traumas, those things. So be willing to lean in to those pain points, because like I was talking about before, they're still there. So like my dad saying to me at 15 years old, "You're the best player on our team and you suck," didn't go away just because I quit baseball. It was still there. In fact, it burned more because I quit a game I loved, because the one person who I thought was on my team in that game wasn't. And so what happened was, over time, I realized something. In my 10 years of not talking with dad, what I was doing actually was I had to use mental and emotional energy to keep the lid on the pressure cooker, because guess what? It was still in there. Didn't go away. I didn't wish it away. I didn't whatever. It was still there. I didn't process that trauma. So what happens is, just for numbers, let's say that it was 10% of my physical and emotional energy was spent on that. Then what wasn't getting 100% of me? My job, my friends, my wife, and my kids. That matters. So it sounds weird to set like emotional goals, but I would literally lay out what are traumas that I'm hanging on to, what are unresolved conflicts, if there's resentment, if there's unforgiveness. Tying back to the spiritual thing, you got to figure that out because you're carrying it. They always say unforgiveness and resentment is like taking a poison pill hoping the other person dies, because we're the ones carrying it, not them. So I can't emphasize enough the emotional piece. Now, what that looks like for each of us is different in how we set those goals. I'm trying to build buckets that we can operate in, and then I'm going to tie in some timeline and examples as we go forward. But your relationship with yourself is huge because you're stuck with you the vast majority of the day. Unless you're sleeping, and then your brain, if you're like me, you have weird dreams that you can't comprehend why they existed, and it's just a strange every time you wake up. So within the relationship piece with yourself, our brains are computers. They only spit out what we put in. Rarely do they manufacture things on their own. Once I knew that, I decided to take advantage of that. And so what I did was I literally brainwashed myself with 11 phrases, and I haven't seen them written in probably 10 years. So I don't know that I remember all of them verbatim. But it was things like, I have the best mentors in the world and they believe in me. I mentor the best people in the world and I believe in them. I'm a child of Jesus Christ who believes in me and loves me. I have a wife who supports me and believes in me 100%. I'm a light in a dark world. I believe in the man in the mirror so that I can believe in others. I'm an impact player in the lives of those around me. I literally said these affirmations out loud to my face in my mirror every morning. And multiple times throughout the day, I had them like in my car. I had a little card that if I was having a day, I don't know if you've ever had a day, but I have had some days. It's like, you know what? I need a reset. And I would reset my brain. I decided what my programming was, not the world. That's all our relationship with ourselves. And what's funny is once you start doing that, you start believing it. Because our truth, as far as our view of ourselves, now there's certain truths, right? I'm 5'9" and chubby, and the NFL is not on the radar for me. Like, that's a reality for most of us, for whatever percent of the world, good for them. But there's other realities, like our frameworks, our mindsets, those things, we can control those. It's like I tell people in the mortgage business, it's never a no buying a home. It's just not yet. Anything it takes to get a home loan is fixable. I don't care how tall you are or if you wear glasses or not, none of that matters. The things that we need are fixable. And I think it's the same with our mindsets. I'm not trying to minimize the things that a lot of you have probably been through and that I've been through. But as long as we allow those things to control us, we're actually yielding that power over our existence to that person who we probably resent. Like Wally Hunter said at Will James in whatever year I was in 8th grade. Every time someone makes you allow someone to make you mad, you're handing them the reins to your day. So I decided to just so overwhelm my emotional brain with myself positively that when the negative crap creeps in, it doesn't have a chance. So whatever that looks like for you for goal setting, what that translates to is some form of a regimen of the things you allow in your brain and the things you don't. Facebook is awful for both, right? Like the things that we get in our brain is everyone else's highlight reel. And then we go, God, I'm ugly and my lasagna doesn't look like that. And everything's terrible because their life is so amazing. It's like, no, they're showing you their highlight reel. They're not showing you that their kid, I mean, maybe they're showing you their kid just threw up in the crib last night, but most often not. And likewise, I'm very particular about, news and what I'll read on the internet, what outlets I go pursue information from, because the vast majority of things that get eyeballs are horrible. And I just don't have the emotional capacity to carry all of that. I'm not saying it's not existent. I'm just saying that there's certain people that are skill setted and called to pursue and fight those things, and certain people who are called to support them from afar. And I'm fine being both in some cases. But if you go take the whole world on in a fire hose of information day in and day out, scrolling, there's actually social media motion sickness, by the way. I don't know if you know that that's a thing. So if you start feeling weird when you're scrolling mindlessly, that's actually motion sickness. You're welcome for that tidbit. That wasn't in my notes. All that to say, your brain's a computer. Be careful what goes in and be intentional about what comes out. That was sorry. Physical, I literally did this, but on ice skates last year. I played rec league ice hockey for the first time in my life. I ice skated, I played roller hockey. I'd never done the two together, and it was a very educational season. So your relationship with your body. There's people way more qualified with letters after their name. My main concept around this is doing something is better than doing nothing. Whatever plan works for you, work your plan. If it's like, I'm gonna ask for, do we have any people who love the gym? Like, I'm just gonna ask that. Do we have any gym lovers? Throw it in the chat. Or any gym haters? Zero judgment here. I despise the concept of lifting metal repeatedly. So any gym lovers, any gym haters? Jessica loves the gym. I wish I had that in me, but I don't. Oh, Laura Yurko, you and I cannot go to the gym together. I'm in. Cool. So all this to say, guess what? We're not all the same. So whatever works for you, again, figure out your plan, work your plan. So I'm more like, if I'm playing a sport, it's the reason I played rec league ice hockey for the first time at 40 years old. If I'm playing a sport, I can go for 3-4 hours. Walks, absolutely, Carrie. I have a friend who is like, Roselle, I have a friend who is so into hot yoga, and she's like, who's coming out at 5:30 a.m. to check out hot yoga? I'm not. Not that I'm against hot yoga. I got 4 kids. 5:30 a.m., if Lord willing, we're all sleeping. Cool. You and Alyssa Webb, she's a realtor in Billings. Y'all can hot yoga up. Yeah. So it's figuring out your thing and doing it, and finding other people who do it. Remember that social thing? I don't know the exact stat, but I know it's gargantuanly higher when you have accountability around a workout plan. My company is actually doing a step bet right now. I didn't know what that was. There's an app that an organization can set up a challenge for their people. You build out a challenge, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever. The app actually goes into your Fitbit, your Apple Watch, your cell phone, whatever government monitoring device you wear daily. And it checks your history and it makes a goal for you. And then for 5 weeks, you have certain steps goals every day. And everybody who wants to participate throws in $10. And then if you hit your goals for the full 5 weeks, you get your $10 back and a share of anybody who didn't meet their goals. So it's like healthy gambling. And unless you're walking in place, you're probably not gambling at the casino. If you're walking out at a park or wherever. I can tell you that if you do the Denver Zoo and Meow Wolf, which is a crazy art museum experience in Denver, the best way I can describe it is a 90,000 square foot acid trip. I don't literally have a better way to describe it. If you do those 2 things in a day, you'll knock out about 17,000 steps, because we just did that on Saturday. So again, if that works for you, if you're competitive, I have a friend Ryan Evangeline is one of my favorite people, because he took excuses away. So Ryan, at the age of 19, was over 500 pounds. To say the least, he had an unhealthy relationship with his emotions, his social, and his physical. He had a very unhealthy relationship with food. And he got sick of it. But he also acknowledged his hardwiring of sorts. He's a video gamer. And so guess what he figured out? If I get a Fitbit, it has little bars that tell me my progress. And to him, it was like fulfilling an achievement on a video game. Closing your rings on the Apple Watch, same thing, same concept. It gets us that dopamine hit that we love about our cell phones. Every time they vibrate, every time they beep, our dopamine addiction increases, by the way. Simon Sinek has a couple great talks on that as well. But anyway, Ryan did that. He goes, I'll get steps on this stupid little thing. I'll track my water, and then I can do math. So he just jumps on Weight Watchers website, doesn't do the meals, just counts points on everything he eats. That was it. That's all he did. He walked on his breaks at work. He drank water instead of pop, and he counted points Weight Watcher. And by his mid-20s, he lost 300 pounds. So he's still probably 250 to 275, but he's also 6'4", so he carries a lot better than I would at 5'9". That all to say, figure out your hardwiring, figure out what works for you, and work it. So the one that I feel, this is my favorite GIF of all time, possibly, by the way. Financial, your relationship with money. I feel most qualified to talk on this one, actually, because of my occupation. I've worked in the banking industry for 16 years and mortgage lending for 6. In mortgage lending, you learn a whole lot about everybody. Because people, there's a great phrase I heard at a training one time. When people do a full mortgage application, they're financially undressing for you. I'll just let that sit because it's uncomfortable. So the funny thing with our relationship with money, and I use relationship intentionally, is if we don't have a good relationship with money, it'll divorce itself from us over and over. If you don't tell your money where to go, it will just go. So here, I think for most people, the basic concept of like a Dave Ramsey baby steps is a big mover for people who've had no financial structure in their life until this point. I think in our industry, specifically in low to mod income households, financial education, financial literacy, I mean, meetings with you folks or meetings with us folks oftentimes is the first financial conversation a lot of these folks have ever had as far as actual foundational principles for success in finances. And so that's huge to me. Like I take home ownership very seriously. Like Katie said, low to mod income borrowers, as much as our business is funny because the easy deals pay us the most money. The vast majority of us mortgage lenders are commission based on loan amount. Well, if somebody's borrowing $500,000, $600,000, they're probably pretty well off and not really a bunch of hurdles financially. If somebody's borrowing $150,000 with a second with NeighborWorks because they don't have any down payment money and their assets are below threshold and all those things, then it's 5 times as much work for 1/5 of the income. But that's not why I do what I do. I do what I do because owning a home is one of the first major steps to generating generational wealth within a family. It's not the only way, but it's a substantial step. The other piece is if you look at within a neighborhood, as you all know, as percentages of home ownership increase, all of the other good things increase, all of the other bad things generally decrease. And so the more we get people owning homes, there's pride in ownership, all those things. All of that ties to a relationship with money. Other folks probably need to have a conversation with a budget because they're doing well. So I would say step one, goal setting wise within financial, would be to establish some level of a budget, or at least a base concept of your ins and outs, your debits and credits, as my bookkeeper mother would say. Because if we don't, then it just goes and comes and goes and comes. And then all of a sudden we have $12,000 on a credit card. We don't understand how it happened, but we're paying 20% on it. That's actually a funny one. I encourage people to get, I'm a bad banker. Here's why I mean that. By that, I hate debt. Like the number one cause of divorce isn't money, it's lack of money. I've never heard of couples going, gosh, we have so much money, I hate you. It's always something tied around, not always, but oftentimes it's tied around finances. And even when it's quality time as the love language that's being cut down, it ties back to finances because he or she has this expensive hobby they go do instead of quality time with their spouse. Yeah, I talked about marriage. I know it's scary, but outside of our job, it's people we spend the most time with. So we don't want to suck at it, right? I would say set goals there too. That's for the social emotional, but build a budget. And within that budget, build in date nights. That's a crazy idea to actually still go treat your significant other the way you treated them when you got them. When you first made them like you, however you did that. I'm a good salesman. My wife is gorgeous and I'm married up and I'm well aware of it. So yeah, keep doing the things that that started that relationship so strongly. Keep doing those things. We stop doing those things, we should not be surprised when it goes to crap. So relationship with money, Dave Ramsey's baby steps for those who are not familiar. Oh my gosh, Julie, you're hired. You're literally using my brain. Yeah, so baby step 1 is an emergency fund. Baby step 2, I want to say is all consumer debt. Correct me if I'm wrong, Julie. I'd have to go click the link, but it would mess up my whole screen setup. Long story short, he talks about attacking savings, consumer debt, investment retirement strategies, and there's these steps that the Financial Peace University course is very, very rigid. Some people need that. Again, like a workout plan. Some people need a personal trainer shouting at their face 5 days a week. Good for them. I'm not going to enjoy that at all. My wife and I have used a lot of the concepts from Dave Ramsey's baby steps, while not exclusively following them to the letter of the law, which is why we still have one car payment probably, but that was by choice. It was one of those, you could pay cash for the car, but wipe the savings. Let's keep half the savings. So yeah, we need to, and it sucks. Like, especially if your marriage is like my marriage and every marriage I've ever heard of, one is typically more frugal. One is typically more freewheeling. One is typically more, stringent. One is typically more like my brother has all the fun in the world with life. He had to move to a big city because he had to have concerts way more often than Billings has concerts. Had to have professional sports in the city because he just loves all of that event stuff. Other people, like my bride, for example, is very big on, she struggles with spending large amounts of money on experiential things. That's just the thing we've figured out in our marriage. Again, we had goals around finances, so we discussed them. It's a weird idea too. I don't spend anything over $100 without consulting my wife. That's just for us personally. I don't know, maybe that's a goal for you to have a conversation with your significant other. But our relationship with money it's like we do it as ours. We don't do separate accounts. I'm not having that marriage sermon right now with you, not my place. But that being said, everyone's like, well, just go do this, go do whatever. She'll never know. It's like, we're joined on everything. She knows everything because I don't want the opportunity for stupid to creep in. So I don't hide anything from her. It's just not a thing we're going to do. I know that's way more into the relationships and social stuff, but it matters. If you're tired of fighting with your wife, maybe or your husband or your significant whomever, maybe to have some of these conversations with them. I could be stepping out of bounds on that, but I'm encouraging it. So timelines. These timelines just help me with the next step, which is reverse engineering. So timelines help us kind of bracket out, what do I need to do this month? Because my goal is to pay off my consumer debt. Okay, I got $27,000 of consumer debt and I have a spare $200 a month. Okay. So then it's reworking budget, it's considering night jobs, it's those things. So then you lay out, what am I willing to do? In the book, Put Your Dream to the Test, John Maxwell talks about the cost of your dream. Anybody who knows anybody who's a doctor, there's no such thing as balance. People talk about balance, work-life balance. There's zero balance in medical school. When you're doing 80 to 110 hour a week residency, there's zero balance. But that's a short-term thing. So it's figuring out, what's my goal or dream going to cost? And am I willing to pay that price? So like in my case, in the financial world, money and time is either your best friend or your worst enemy. Right. And so when I'm talking to people about mortgage, for example, I'm very explicit and say, we can do this structure up front and you buy down your rate this much and it's going to save you X amount. Here's your break even date. Everything beyond that is net savings. Or if you're only going to be in this home 2, 3, 4 years, no point in buying the rate down at all. In fact, you could be a point higher and it still wouldn't matter, because long game is when interest kills you or makes you. And so figuring out those timelines and putting those goals in there. So short term, next 12 months, 6 to 12 months. Short term for some folks, for my manager at Famous Dave's, where I used to wait tables, it was to quit Coke and switch to water. He lost 42 pounds in 6 months by switching from Coke to water because he drank 60 to 90 ounces a day. For some of us, it's our caffeine addiction. For some of us, it's whatever our spiritual realm is. I'm going to attend a religious service X amount of weeks out of the year. Is my goal to grow in that area. Financially, we're going to actually build a budget this month and hate each other while we do it. But then we'll have a foundation to work from. Midterm is kind of 1 to 5 year stuff. That stuff that takes a little longer for a lot of us, for consumer debt, student loan kind of stuff on the financial side. If there's a substantial, I can tell you at 40 years old and having just played 1 year of ice hockey and really no other substantial workout since high school till then. I'm not going to be running a marathon in the next 12 months. So that's kind of a 1 to 5 year physical, right? I want to get my body into X amount of shape. I want to go to the gym X amount of times. I want to stop eating garbage so much. My family wants to get intentional about what we put in our bodies because we only have one. That's our relationship with our body. We only have one. So we want to get intentional about those goals. Long-term, 5 to 10 year, this is where I encourage dreaming. I encourage taking the lid off your brain, whatever lid somebody put on you. Your parent, your sibling, some people, their spouse. You could never do that. In the realm of Christianity, one of the defining factors, they say, Satan came to steal, kill, and destroy. So any messaging I get from anybody, I run it through a filter. Is that coming to steal, kill, or destroy, or is it coming to give life? If it's coming to kill, steal, or destroy, I dismiss it. And then I go overwhelm my brain with positive. So long-term, get a little crazy. Have fun. We just did a really cool thing at our NeighborWorks board meeting where we kind of talked about like this visioning exercise about the organization. And to talk, like kids again, almost, right? Like no college, no high school kid has a poster of a minivan on their wall, right? We're going to drive Porsche 911s and have a condo in Vail. Like I'm talking, get dreamy about stuff because, hey, guess what? If you miss it, if the goal doesn't time out because life punched you in the face, you're still a heck of a lot better off and closer than you were, right? So yeah, long-term 5 to 10 years, it gets pretty crazy because then you're looking at so in 10 years, I've got a 23-year-old down to a 14-year-old for children. I've got 4 boys. So in a decade, what kind of citizen have I built my 13-year-old up to be in the next 5 to 10 years? What are we teaching them? What am I learning? What other opportunities have I had to serve on boards, to impact our community, to, spoil my parents because they didn't kill me, because they should have. If I were my parents, I would have smacked the crap out of me. That's my lack of filter, but it's the truth. And then legacy. Legacy is what's the Ullman name mean? So legacy is like in this progression, the reason goal setting matters so much to me is I think there's 4 phases. I didn't put this in my slides, but I think there's kind of 4 phases of living. And we all see this every day. There's survival, there's stability, there's success, and there's significance. Survival is just that: food, water, shelter. Because of the alleged pending recession, some of which have already have started, and the mortgage world interest rates and everything going on in our industry, I've had conversations with my children, with my family, because my kids always say, I need that. They see a Lego set, I need that. I say, no, you want that. You need, this is my bumper sticker phrase with my kids. We all have them growing up. Here's mine that I'm giving to my kids. You need food, water, shelter. Everything else is gravy. You need survival. Stability is, the way I look at it is we're mowing our own lawn. And what I mean by that is we can take care of our affairs, but we really don't have anything we're not in a position to impact anybody else, whether that's financially, whether that's with our time or our skill sets, we're maintaining. But as we know, in the current inflationary market, we're not maintaining. So there's survival, stability, success. Success is when you can start making dents around you. I want to live in such a way that I leave a little bit of a dent in the world. That's just me personally. That's why I talk the way I talk about the things I talk about. And then significance is when you start making some big dents. Significance is impacted lives. Significance is 2 friends asking me to officiate their weddings because they love their pastor, but they know that I know their story. Significance for my men's group, for me, is bearing one another's burdens and in doing so fulfill the law of Christ. I get to take part in miracles. It's kind of crazy. So to me, that's legacy stuff. That's people remembering your name even when you're not in the room. And not just for who you are or what you did, but the impact it has around you. The average person impacts 10,000 lives throughout their life, according to most estimates. Interestingly enough, if you go to a room with 10,000 people, most often you can do one thing better than anyone else in that room. I would encourage you to do some goal setting to figure out that one thing. to start to dig into some of that stuff. So here's start at the finish line. This is the reverse engineering part. So example, 12-month goals. I just picked one for each that have kind of, except for the conflict with my sibling, my brother and I actually are doing really well. That's just an example a lot of people deal with. So spiritual, read the Bible in a year. My men's group is actually doing that. You have to average 4 chapters a day, 365 days a year. It's like a 2,000 page book. The reason we pick 4 chapters a day is some chapters are short and some are long. So it kind of gives you some wiggle in your days. Some people do it by the page. Some people do front to back. There are some great Bible reading programs out there if you go Google them. So whatever that looks like for you spiritually, I want to meditate this many times a week and recenter myself. I want to go do hot yoga and sweat with strangers. Good for you. That's good for you. I need to try hot yoga. I just can't bring myself to it. Social. I need to resolve that conflict. What's that look like for a 12-month goal? Well, if I reverse engineer it, maybe it's starting with me meeting with a counselor, being like, here's where I'm at with this conflict, and here's how I'm looking at it. Am I off base? A lot of times a counselor is the secret weapon, because you get somebody who's not emotionally in the middle of your situation, and they can give you a bit more objective look at it. Emotional, to grieve a loss of a dream I had in the past. I had to process through and grieve the fact that there is no more fast pitch baseball once you're 15 and walk away and don't go back during school. There is no running into, this sounds silly, but this was a high school kid's dream, running down that tunnel of your teammates as your name gets announced over the loudspeaker in a football game. My parents divorced when I was 15. We had an abundance of trauma and depression in our home, and I had the wrong people around me at the time. And so I quit football 2 days into my senior year. I walked away from guys that I'd played football with for almost a decade. And that's not a thing you can ever get back. I couldn't even drive by Daly Stadium for 5 years without tearing up. I avoided 5th and Grand Avenue like the plague. Just being honest. You got to grieve that. There are expectations we had. There's anybody here who, my folks are divorced, anybody here who's dealt with that personally or family or whomever, you have to grieve that lost expectation. And so to reverse engineer that, again, I'd say it probably starts with a counselor or a trusted close sphere of friends who are willing to carry that kind of stuff with you. If you do not have that, I would very much encourage you to find it. Personally, in my biblical worldview, Satan loves secrets. And so when we bring those things to a body of believers, it takes his power away from it and allows us to use it for God's glory. That's just my 2 cents on that. Physical, lose X amount of pounds or X percentage of body fat. If you have no clue how to do that, number one, there's all sorts of actual analytics, like genetic stuff you can figure out about your body type and all that. Also, there's gyms, personal trainers, hot yogas. There's your neighbor lady who walks her dog all the time. Just jump in with her, ask if you can walk with her. But reverse engineer that and build a plan to a daily habit. John Maxwell says our secret to success is hidden in our daily routines. One of the world's foremost violinists said one time that if I miss practice for 1 day, I know. If I miss practice for 2 days, my wife knows. And if I miss practice for 3 days, the world knows. That's how important our daily habits are. Financial, again, to pay off the things I already own, allegedly. Also, if you have credit card debt that you carry month over month, I tell this to my clients because I'm a jerk, you're paying 20% for pizza and underwear. If you went to Walmart and put it on a credit card, we're paying 20% for our underwear. Let's stop doing that. So let's get the budget thing figured out, get our emergency savings in place so that when the crap of life does happen, when life punches us in the face, we have $1,000 sitting aside, ready to take it on. Resources. So this is just books that have impacted me along the way. The first personal development book I ever read was The Magic of Thinking Big by Dr. David Schwartz. And I should write him a letter because it changed my life. It was the first book that took the lid off my brain. Put your dream to the test. If anybody's familiar with John Maxwell's work, it's a very practical, usable way to assess, to dig into kind of your leanings and assess your goals and dreams and see if I'm willing to pursue that, what's it cost, what's it gain. It's a great book for that. Visioneering by Andy Stanley, again, another great book about taking the lid off. And then The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. It's a Christian-based book, but I love it because it's not exclusively just like straight up, God said this, go. It's themed that way. If you know what you're reading it. But either way, it's phenomenal because it's this little tiny parable and it's literally written like, there was a man named Ordinary who lived in a land called Familiar. and best friend would come over, and best friend is capitalized. It's a proper noun. So, and his mom is called mom and his uncle is called uncle. It's just this really simple book that really addresses, if you start the journey of pursuing goals, how that goes and how to overcome the obstacles and who are probably going to be your obstacles. Spoiler alert, when he talks about the border bullies at the edge of familiar, when you're going into the unknown and pursuing your goal, the border bullies are not strangers who are trying to hold you back. It's usually your mom, your best friend, and your uncle. So those are just phenomenal books that have helped me. If you want to connect with me, any other routes, LinkedIn, there's an Ian Ullman who is in the chief investigations officer or something important. That ain't me. My business Facebook, my email address for a work email, and just in case I talked about mortgage or interest rates at any point, there's my NMLS number. The most important slide by far is just to say thank you for carving an hour out and entrusting it to me. Hopefully give you some form of investment in opening your brain up to a little bit of a framework around goal setting and how it can potentially, you can take a couple pieces off the shelf at the grocery store of training and put them to use for you. So any questions, I'm glad to help, whether it's, if you're not comfortable throwing them in chat or whatever, feel free to shoot them to me in an email, which I can jump back to that. So you can send them to me via email, or however you want to dialogue. I'm good with it. I'm open. If you want to jump off mute and ask it that way, I'm fine either way, unless Katie tells me I can't.
We still have a couple minutes. I just want to say thank you to Ian before we jump in on any questions. We haven't gotten it yet. We all work with people every day that have dreams and they have goals and don't always know how to get there. And I think all of us have dreams and goals. So we appreciate your vulnerability and sharing with us as a peer and as a colleague. And we just, I loved what you said about socially, if COVID taught us anything, is that people need people. And we are in a very relational line of business in all that we do. And the people that we serve need us, but we also need to take care of ourselves. And we need to have our own goals around social and emotional and things like that. So I just really appreciate your vulnerability and your time with us. If there's any questions, please throw them in the chat. I do know that Ian is incredibly available and will respond to you if you do reach out. But if you have any questions for him right now, please throw those in. Otherwise, we'll give you a few minutes of your day back. The thing I do want to make sure I mention before we do close out, if there are no questions, and Ian, I hope you're reading the chat. Lots of great kudos to what you did.
Yes, thank you very much.
We are concluding our day together. We hope that you can all join an in-person networking event from 4 to 5:30. I do believe Ian will be at the Billings event. We kind of conned him into planning the Billings event. So Ian will be at the Billings event if you are in Billings and want to chat with him further. Please check the conference website for more information on where those are each taking place. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning for our plenary session at 9 a.m. But again, if you do have questions, we can be around for a few more minutes. Otherwise, take a few minutes of your day back, and we appreciate all your time. Perfect. Hope you saw that Lori said you rock, Ian.
Oh, dude, that's the highest compliment from maybe the best loan processor, whatever your job title is in the business.
It's okay. At NeighborWorks, we like to have 17 job titles in one job title. So,
well, yeah, I mean, although Katie, you have to remember there's no such thing as multitasking. That's just doing two things crappy.
I did appreciate that. I multitask very often. Well,
there's actually a neurological study. It's called brain switching, and it's inefficient. You should stop. Which is annoying to hear because I'm the same way.
I'm a professional multitasker. Cool. Well, we can let everyone go. It looks like people are signing off, and I don't think anyone has reached out to you for any questions. So
awesome. Thank you all very much for the time. I appreciate it more than you know.
Thanks, Ian.